this is the best example that I can give you of what can happen to companies that start together. Deep and I actually used to work together at a company called GE Capital, right, Deep?
Hi, Raman. Hi, everyone.
And we both started our startups at around the same time.
That is true.
He's valued at his startup more than 2 billion. I sold out and ran from the field much before. But again, at different places, we've spoken of different business models of what you can do. And this is between the two of us, this is a reality. Deep may not remember this, or he may never ever want to remember this. But in one of his weaker moments, in our younger days, Deep offered me a board seat on MakeMyTrip. And now in public with all of you, all 46 of you there, I'll tell you, it is one of the worst decisions I took to say, no, I don't want it. Because I was very worried what my investors would say if I sat on another company's board. And that also brings out lack of knowledge. I mean, I didn't even ask them. I didn't even think what they would say. I just assumed that they would not be favorable to that. So one of the worst decisions I took. Though you may not even recall, say, I'd never offer a board seat to idiots like you, but that's a separate story. So, Deep pioneered online travel.
One sec, I have to respond to some of this.
Oh shit.
Okay. So firstly, hi everyone. It's so nice, Raman, Priyank, Kavya, and everyone else. I wish we were doing this in person, but and we did do this in person a couple of years ago. But hopefully, we'll meet again in person. Next best thing. But I'm so excited to be here for multiple reasons. Ashoka, of course, which has a good part of my heart since the last many years. And I remember Raman, unfortunately, I have the memory of an elephant. So I'd go to your desk, and his desk had all kinds of stuff. We had open floor plan, but one of the cutest things on his desk, which caught my, kind of fancy, was Tuesday, Thursday, leave or get home, leave for home at 6 p.m. And that was, I think, his pact with his daughters, because if he didn't go, he would just keep working like the rest of us. So he had that, and he was very sorted. And we quit on the same day, on 1st of April, 2000, we both quit. He set up a great company, SpectrumMind. I would actually go to his office, and I have to embarrass him even further. So his office was in Okhla, and we went through a very tough time in our first few years. We had MakeMyTrip had first probably a decent year, and the next 4 years were really tough. We were close to shutting down. So I think around 2002, 2003, I went to his office, corner office in Okhla, in his lovely spread out BPO. And the first thing I noticed is that Raman is smoking. So Raman and Pramod both used to be chain smokers. Raman's smoking in his office. And I'm saying, like, what the hell? How can you even do this? And he's saying, no, I have a window, and this is, I'm the boss, and I opened the window, and so I don't know if he remembers that. I said, okay, fine. So
not just the window, there was an exhaust from the window.
Right.
We did it all right.
Raman very kindly actually offered to buy us out because we were going through a very tough time. And he said, you come here and you head travel vertical for me, and let's set up travel in a big way. I know a bit about travel from Amex, but let's do this whole .com thing. So I'll never forget that. That was very kind. Thankfully, we went through that. The board seat offer, not only do I remember, it still stands, sir.
We'll talk over a cup of tea on that.
Some other libations, but it still stands.
You have 53 people hearing that, 52 other than you.
You'll have to get approval of rest of the board, but I can tell you, I will propose it, and I would love to have you on. So since you didn't join, I asked one of your colleagues to join, and Vivek Gaur actually was on our board for many, many years. So anyway, let's get into the topic.
The Deep and I have done this song and dance a few times at different institutions, trying to bring out. There is The reason I requested and Deep very kindly accepted is there is a lot of learning sitting with Deep. Just the last 5 minutes, I mean, for a what is the present what is the present valuation, Deep?
I think we are flirting with, we were over 3, but thanks to Mr. Putin, I think we're about 2.7.
Yeah,
I have to
that's what I
admit,
was going to say. You're still above
I don't check
2
every
and a
day,
half, but you were way above that. And
okay,
for
2.8
him to
yesterday.
say they went through a tough time, and some of the stories I will try and bring out. We structured this as a session where I will try and bring out some aspects. We'll try and focus on team building. We'll try and focus on creating a team, creating a company, and taking it there. So Deep, while we talk of team, I thought the first thing I'd start with is saying that when you started out, you didn't really have a team, you didn't have a co-founder. How did it happen? And if you were to redo it, would you look at it differently?
Yeah, Raman, I have too many familiar faces here. Yeah, I'm seeing my friends, my daughter's friends, my friends' sons. So too many kids are getting in here. This is seeming like quite a party here. But so hi, Devin. Hi, Kritan. Seeing Kritan after ages. Devin, I luckily met once in a while, but good to see you all. Okay. So yeah, I have to be honest, folks. So I think I was naive enough to think I can, build an internet business on my own. So I had, total 8 years of WorkX with me, 3 different companies, last of which was GE Capital, which only lasted 16 months, which was a regret, but I got bitten by the .com bug. I actually tried to infuse .com in GE. I convinced Pramod, he did make a team of 16, 17 people. He gave us $1 million, wanted to do GEindia.com. But I think pretty soon I realized that, the internet's got to be something you do 24/7. It can't be your Friday or your Saturday project. And GE was a huge company, and GE's raison d'etre was definitely different, right? So for GE Financial Services, there was different raison d'etre, GE Capital. I mean, this wasn't your reason or your purpose for living. And for startups, which is really the theme of this entire course, the biggest learning I have is that you've got to live by it and die by it. It's got to be your reason for living completely. There's nothing else you can think about when you wake up. There's nothing else you should think about when you go to sleep, but your startup, at least for the first, 5 years, 7 years, from the time, the startup goes from being a toddler, starts walking, has feet of its own, has a life of its own. So that's just an overarching thing. And it's a very hard learning because I've seen a lot of people try to do multiple things. I still see entrepreneurs come in and they say, hey, I don't want to quit my job. I'm going to keep doing that, but I'll do this on the side. It ain't going to work, pal. So someone, ideally 1, 2, 3 people are going to be doing only this and thinking about this, and they're great sacrifices. Someone says there's work-life balance for a startup in the early days, then, they're clearly smoking some funny stuff. There's none. It's just, it's all out. This is all you do. You catch up with a little bit of sleep, do your basic needs, get some food, and this is what you do every day. I used to have a toothbrush in my office, as did 20 or 30 people in the startup days. Many nights was spent there, normally just grabbing maybe 2-3 hours of sleep, either under the desk, on the chair, whatever was comfortable. And because there was so much to do and we had very little money. So what you're seeing of startups now is a very jazzed up version, very sexy version of startups. It's not real. It won't last forever. This is very Silicon Valley-like. There's a lot of money being thrown in, but it also goes out very fast. So, but to build something real, you actually ironically need less money. You need money, but you need less money. If the more money you get, the more spoiled you get, and therefore the less optimal decisions you make when you have too much money. So that's just an overarching theme. We'll come back to this. But Raman's question, so I was naive enough to think I can do this on my own. Some confidence probably came, maybe the degrees or diplomas one had, maybe the WorkX, maybe age. because when I started this, I was still not 30. I was, I was just 30 when I started MakeMyTrip. And I think at that age, you really believe you can change the world, as you should. And at least it's also mental makeup and maybe a personal thing. So for me, it was, what's the worst that can happen, right? The worst that can happen is this won't work out. This might fail, but I'll always get another job because I had that degree. And it's very relevant for you guys, because when you get out of here, if you want to start up your own thing immediately or a little later, you will be armed with a pretty powerful degree. Yes, it's an undergrad degree. Some of you will do the dual course, but it's still a powerful degree. And in India, let me tell you, there's a big need of smart people. That's not changing. Until the age of, I think, 40, you don't even have to worry about getting jobs. After 40, in the new age sectors, people worry a bit. People don't want to hire folks. But early days, it's a done deal. So I luckily had that confidence. Naive enough to start alone. Lucky enough to get some wonderful guys along the way. Many great people, but at least 3 incredible guys.
That we'll talk about separately, Deep, how
Okay.
you went to them and everything. So,
okay,
because that's the core part of what I want to cover, really.
Yeah, and so I went to first principles. I jumped headlong into it, and I said, how hard can it be to do? It's been done overseas. There are internet online.com kind of companies. I looked at Travelocity, which barely exists today, got bought out by Expedia. Expedia exists and is doing well. It's a powerful company, $30 billion. And I looked at a couple of companies. In India, there was none, but I have to say it didn't deter me then, right or wrong, I don't know. It actually almost excited me. And it was more like, listen, the road less traveled is also fun because you make your own rules. So I think I took it in that stride. And I actually, Raman, did not think very hard about seeking out a co-founder. And in hindsight, I would change that. And I have no hesitation. Do you want me to talk about?
You would change that?
Yeah, I would change that. I have no hesitation in saying that. My advice to my younger self, or my advice to any young entrepreneur today, is the ideal number is 2. I think 3 is a crowd, leads to politics, all kinds of issues. I think 2 is a great number, complementary skills. Why? Because it's very lonely when you start alone. And when you have the toughest decisions, which are around existentialism, will you survive? Should you pack up? Which we had for the first 2001 to 2003, literally, I had to tell myself, let's not think about this every day. Let's go in for a month. End of month, let's review, are we going to do this more? Because there's hardly any money, and one was taking no salary, etc. So there was nothing really much to encourage you except a little bit of your curves going in the right direction, revenue moving up, costs coming down. The twain shall meet one day. You need fuel for those 2 graphs to intersect, etc. So you need someone who you can, I think, share this with and discuss with, who has equal skin in the game, or at least the same kind of status in the game, like the same class of risk capital. So it's not a job for them. For them also, it means everything. So I think 2 is a great number, complementary skills. If one brings tech to the table, all things tech, maybe product design all thrown in, then the other should bring all things business, which would be business, which would be marketing, which would be finance, which would be how to get customers, how to take care of them. So that whole piece. So you have very well-defined pieces. You can obviously opine on each other's, but you're not stepping on each other's toes. Also, hiring decisions and all in the initial this thing, it's great to have one more person to have a look, because again, only founders can feel in a certain way about their company. That's the reality. Founders, co-founders. So yeah, I would change that. But anyway, that's
so Deep, I just to bring out 2-3 perspectives for the class. When you and I started out, founder and co-founders was not as much of a term as it is today, right? So one aspect is the founders. The other aspect is, whatever the business be, at least if it is services business, like what you did, like what I did, there is a doer level person, right? They're the people who actually fulfill. And then there is what I call the senior management, the management team, so to speak. So founder or co-founder, management team, and the doer. So what I want you to bring out, when in your journey, what made you think that you needed people beyond the doers, that when you needed the management team, what was that point where you said you needed it? And give that understanding. Later today, I'll talk to them about when I thought I needed them, but I wanted your perspective.
Yeah, surely. And I think it's a great point. So, the one thing I slightly disagree, Raman, with what you said is that it isn't because someone is the doer, the person can also not be the co-founder, etc. For me, that wasn't the case. At least for me, in the early days, co-founders should do everything.
But Deep, I guess I'm talking of the guy who'd pick up the phone and answer it, or do the vendor paper invoice.
Okay, got it.
I'm talking of the pyramid of the doer level. I'm not talking of the middle management. So I'm segregating the management piece and the doer piece.
I got it.
And bring out the management piece.
I got it. And for me, the need where it came out from was more around retention, to put it very crudely, people who won't abandon the ship during the toughest hour. So let me give you a little bit of context how tough it was, guys. And I'll be very honest. 2000, we had a dream start. Actually, a dream start. I got, we signed on a paper napkin on Crossroads Mall in Bombay in Tardeo with a firm called eVentures. Neeraj Bhargav, he promised me $2 million to take a big share of the company. I had very little capital of my own, which I'd saved up. And I said, sounds like a good deal. He seemed like a nice guy. He was a senior from Stephens. I didn't know him. He was many years my senior, but he seemed like a decent guy. 2 McKinsey guys had started eVentures, the other Sandeep Singhal, who's at Nexus now, and the third was Rajesh Jog. And I took their money and I went about building the site and the company and the team. And by October 7th, we had actually launched the site. So in just about 6 months, had a team, 40 odd people, launched the site, things were working. So we actually went on breakneck speed because there were no Saturday, Sundays. Like I was saying, we were working on the average over 100 hours a week. I kid you not. That was the kind of work. And it was great. It felt like it was a lot of fun. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. However, as luck would have it, we had the triple whammy, I say, of, at least for us, not just the internet world. So 9/11 happened first. So for you, many of you were born around, I guess, 9/11, 2001. So 9/11 happened, which turned the world of travel upside down, particularly for us, because all our business was US, India then. Indians weren't buying online. Non-resident Indians were buying online in the US. So those guys were, scared to step on a plane for a while. They were like, listen, planes are weapons. We're not even getting onto a plane. The SARS epidemic happened, which actually freaked out a lot of people to fly over the eastern side. So West Coast US to come to India, etc. And SARS epidemic one was actually the forefather of COVID. So that was the first ever SARS kind of epidemic. And the dot-com bust happened around the same time. So dot-com bust hit US 99, 2000, hit Indian shores 2000, 2001. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who's one person whose memory is even crazier than mine, says that they were the second last .com internet company to get funded. That was Naukri.com, InfoEdge. And we were apparently the last. So we got very lucky with that funding. That took us for a while, but we hit all the targets. And in about a year's time, we came back for, we needed more money, which was the plan. We'd shaken hands that if we hit at certain targets, we'll get another $1 million. All the targets were hit. And guess what? Thanks to the dot-com boom, this fund, eVentures, ceased to exist. They were packing up. Their LPs, I didn't even know what the term LP means then. I was so naive. LP is limited partner, the people who had funded in that fund, which was none other than Star TV, Rupert Murdoch, and Masayoshi Son, SoftBank. So both of them had 50% of this fund. And they were saying, we're getting out of all internet assets around the world. So either shut down your business, give us whatever money's left, or buy us out. Those are the two options I got this time from Neeraj. And I said, listen, if I could buy you out, I wouldn't have taken your money in the first place. I clearly don't have that kind of money. And that's when I was introduced to the concept of distress valuation. He just kind of smiled and said, make us an offer. So I went to a friend of mine who's a CA also from school. And I asked Sanjay Bansal, I said, listen, what do I do? And he said, how much money do you have? And, I literally begged and borrowed, did not steal. And I could put forward maybe about 50 lakhs. And I made them this offer of 46 lakhs. And I learned my hardest and best lesson ever in negotiation. In 15 minutes, the meeting was over. They agreed. They agreed to give me back their entire share for 46 lakhs. And I was saying, what just happened here? And what happened here, folks, was that all they wanted to do was wipe their hands off, wash their hands off of a potential liability. They had seen companies shut down. They had seen people get into depression. They had seen founders jump off buildings and literally kill themselves. And they said, the last thing we want is to be on the board and to be the majority shareholder of a company where this has happened. So buy us out. And basically bought them out. My biggest lesson was, get into the shoes of the other side whenever you are negotiating. Before you go into that meeting, think really hard. What if you were eVentures? What if you were the financier? What if you were the other guy? What are you looking for? And if I had done that, I could have bought them out for half that money, literally. Actually, that's when 1 rupee deals happen and 1 cent deals. These deals happen because they want to sell the liability or the potential liability. So very often you'll read in the newspaper that a company was sold for ₹1 and you say, how ridiculous. Actually, it's negative net worth. But what people are selling it off for is, I don't want the liability, I want to wash myself. So it's really good if you can get into the shoes of the other side, you'll negotiate much better. That was my learning. So we bought back that company at that point, bought back our own company completely with help from some angels, and went through a period of 2 years, which was hellish, hand-to-mouth existence. Team size shrunk overnight from 42 people to almost half. We were 24 overnight. That was the one time I remember telling people on a Saturday, we had a small kind of dining place. And I said, guys, this time no one's coming in Sunday. Think about it. Things are tough. We have very little money. There'll be no increments. Senior people are expected to take cuts. Junior people, no cuts in salary, but no increments till we do better. Think about it if you're in or out. Monday morning, and I said, no qualms, no hard feelings. Just let me know. I actually secretly wanted some people to leave because I wanted to reduce our cash burn, and so some senior people left because they would have to take cuts in salaries. Most senior guys took 50% cuts in salaries. I went with 100% cut for 18 months because I could. We, had some savings, etc. But it was a crazy time because every month you had to review and say, can we actually afford to make payroll next month? Can we afford to pay rent? Rent, naturally, we cut back on the office. We were in Okhla phase 1, which was already cheap. It was at 32 or 34 rupees a square foot, but we moved from the first floor, it was industrial area, to the mezzanine floor, which was really like, if I raise my hand straight, I touch the ceiling.
Low ceiling, yeah.
Yeah, very low ceiling, mezzanine, 8 feet tall. And, it was also long and narrow. So we moved to something which was at 11 rupees a square foot, the cheapest real estate possible. It was really, really dirt cheap and it didn't matter. And I don't think any of you will know what a dharam kanta is. There was a dharam kanta in front of my office. If any of you know, I'm very impressed. So a dharam kanta is a place where trucks come to get loaded and reloaded because we had a go down of some, I think, Wipro soaps under us or whatever. So Raman Wipro connection there. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, lasted those 2 years on sheer, I think, passion, belief, and a good deal of stubbornness or good zid, which every entrepreneur needs.
Which every entrepreneur needs. That is what I really, the story, I really want the class to understand. That is what doing a startup means. That is the kind of grit and determination you need to be able to, you have to bear the pains of the childbirth of the startup. And that is what Deep is telling us about. Sorry, Deep, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I think I couldn't have put it better. So guys, I have not heard of stories where it's been a bed of roses right through. Maybe some guys have had that kind of experience. Great. 90% of startups go through tough times. They are important. And sadly, 80 or 90% of people, startups actually call it a day during those tough times. And imagine if we had called it a day. We had various offers. I'll give you real offers. I see another friend here. Hi, Arnav, how are you? So we go through, we go through these phases, and basically there's an opportunity cost at all points of time. Your opportunity cost is, what else could I be doing? What else? So therefore, what could I be earning? What could people be doing? Not just founder, co-founder, everyone in the company is thinking the same when things are down. When things are up, you're not thinking like that. Things are up, you're saying, wow, this is great, right? I'm getting paid. I'm loving what I'm doing. We're building something great and special, and my stock is getting potentially valued more and more. So everything's going great. But when chips are down, it's human nature. We start thinking about these things. So one is, you can lock people in with instruments, which we'll come to later, I'm sure, but you want them to stay for the right reason. You want them to stay because they love being here, because they believe in that story. They're part of that whole story, and they believe, yes, we are going to change the world. This is a blip. And therefore, when COVID happens,
I want you to dwell a little on this. I
Yeah.
mean, the legal lock-in vis-a-vis their belief and everything, because one of the key aspects that I've been trying to bring out to the class is how to look for co-founders, how to look for senior management, and what it takes. In fact, we are trying to simulate that as a part of the presentation that they will make. So
Yeah.
I want you to build on that, because I think that understanding is very, very critical for them to understand the will, and it is just not about a legal contractual obligation.
No, absolutely. And I'll be completely candid. And I remember most of those things quite well. And then every now and then we have these sessions where, some of the old fogies, they're still around. We'll talk and we'll say, wow, remember those times. And old people always lament that the company is not the same anymore. And it was great fun then. And obviously what they're saying was, the proximity they had to the founding team, etc. But I'm blessed that we have a lot of them around. So, what happens then is, so during that time, I made a rule that, listen, I realized, firstly, you're also learning all the time. So at 31, you're saying, I just started the company. Everything was going well. What if we call it quits and go back? So I could afford to pay everyone 1 or 2 months salary and say, guys, it ain't working out, and pack up and go. And I knew I'll get a job. I knew others will get a job. But I also knew that it's unlikely I will have the guts or the gumption to go ahead and try another startup. I'd not done a startup before of my own, but I'd done a very entrepreneurial job actually as my second job. Between ABN AMRO and GE Capital, I brought a company called AMF Bowling to India. Tried to start this whole family entertainment sport of 10-pin bowling, billiards, pool, etc. Worked very hard. 4 years, I tried to make it happen. Financially, it was a disaster. We would put in some 2,000 lanes. We only got 200 lanes because cost of real estate in India was very high. I realized that later. We were competing for the same real estate that a McDonald's or a Shoppers Stop or a Haldiram was competing for. So the project wouldn't be viable, but it took a while. But I learned a lot. I learned all my street smarts there. But I had tasted failure once, and I took it very personally. For me, that was as good as my company because I was their first employee in India. I built a small team here. I thought if I had that one failure, I had this second failure, and 2 dots typically, make a line, I will probably not have the guts to do it once more. So something inside me kept saying, give it everything one's got. Also, because when I fell back onto the numbers, and I'm a complete creature of statistics, numbers, metrics completely. So I like to believe I have right brain also, but I'm largely left brain. But I would go back to the numbers and I could see all the time that we were moving in the right direction. So our conversion, which is the most important ratio almost in any business, our conversion ratios were improving. I'm not even talking about, absolute numbers, which means more people coming to the site is fine, but more of them were converting. So even if more people didn't come, if 100 people were coming to the site every day, we were inching up how many we were converting. That's a really important number. Of course, conversion is a single number, but when you break down the funnel, it goes down onto 5 steps or 6 steps. And for every line of business, we were getting better at that. So clearly people were liking our service. The second most important thing was, as a consequence of this, and as a consequence of better spend on marketing, we were getting more bang for the buck. So our cost of customer acquisition was also coming down at the same time. So it was a double good whammy. So we were converting better, spending less money. We were spending less money to acquire more customers. So both of this together meant our burn every month was coming down, which was a great thing. It was coming down. Now I just needed enough fuel to last, I felt, another year or two. And then we would, be making money. We wouldn't be completely reliant on external capital. We could fund our own business, etc. So that was encouraging. And the third most important metric, which I want you to remember no matter what you do, and people don't talk about it enough, is actually repeat. Repeat rate is so critical. People don't talk about it enough. Repeat rate, particularly unaided repeat, which is you're not getting people back by giving them incentives. They're coming back naturally on their own, is the biggest testimony and the biggest sign of a healthy business. So people like your product, they like your service. Even in a B2B business like Raman's, if the customer either came back for more or just expanded their portfolio, so that we call it wallet share. So they want to do more and more with you because they really like the company they were dealing with. Any business you're in, repeat is very important. Getting more share of wallet, or in my kind of business, which is a retail business, people coming back because they said, we like the service, we like the product. These three numbers and these three ratios, if they're moving in the right direction, these three metrics rather, then you're onto something. And that kept me going, that listen, we're onto something. Then it came to team. So it came down to, how do I get the team to believe in the same philosophy?
Talk to us about that, Deep. This is very critical.
I can see it happening, but does my team see it happening? So I figured the best way to do this is to keep it as transparent and open as possible. So right from the very beginning, we hid no dashboard. It was a little scary because I was also sharing the cash dashboard with everyone, how little cash we had left. But if you can set up that kind of ethos, I felt, then people's maturity will determine how much they can, digest. So you can tell them upfront, guys, this is it. What I liked about it was that you didn't have to keep on getting people, they got it. So literally we had our dashboard published. You could go online at any point of time. You could see everything. In fact, I was a big believer in saying that we should even have everyone's salaries up there, which is the best because people anyway figure out everyone's salaries in company life. We didn't ever get to that, sadly. Some companies do that. I think it's a great thing, by the way. It just shows the maturity of a company. But you had all the expenses there. You had all the how much we earned that day, how many tickets we sold, how much money we made on them. Everything was there. Now, what the reality is, 70% of people couldn't really care much. They the doers, like Raman called them, they just came in and they looked at you. And if they saw your face light up and your face bright and you were all charged up, they felt things are good. And if they saw you with a long face, then they said things are not good. But 30% of people got it. I mean, they weren't dumb. It wasn't a very complex thing. But the advantage of that was that they were in it together. And they said, firstly, this guy is straightforward. He's honest. He trusts us enough to share this, and also that we will not share it forward with anyone else, etc. That was the thing. This is only for our thing. You can't take a printout. You can't forward it. You can come and see the dashboard at any point of time. And there's a saying in Hindi, aap kitne pani mein ho, unko bhi pata tha. So for me, that was very important, which is, to put it again pretty crudely in English, is, in how much deep shit are you basically? How bad are things? Everybody knew that. You didn't have to explain to that. It was out there. They also knew the value of converting more. They knew the value of making every dollar work harder on marketing, because the more everyone contributed, the better were our chances of getting to break even faster. So it was a company-wide janoon to get to break even on our own money because we had no other money. Also, when they see founders taking huge cuts in salaries, including 100%, it's very inspirational, right? Junior people didn't take any cuts. Others were taking 50% cuts, 100%. They're saying like, wow. So I think we got a lot of true passion and true, spirit to succeed out of that. So that was my mantra in the early days. That doesn't work today. We're too large a company for that today. We have 3,000 people. You can't be running that kind of game. And we went through, ironically, just to cut forward 20 years, we went through the second biggest crisis of all, existentialism crisis 2001 to 2003. And come 2020, luckily not existentialism crisis with COVID. You know what COVID did to travel, national lockdown. I'll just give you one incident and you'll realize the gravity of what it did to a travel business. National lockdown, I think March 24th or 22nd, it was kind of announced. 2 months, no travel, no nothing else. Third month, just limping back. We listed on NASDAQ. I had to report a quarter where we were down 95.5% on revenue of last year, same quarter. And I tried to, keep my sense of humor. So this reporting is called an earnings call, as some of you know. Raman, of course, knows. So I started off by saying, folks, this is all my investors, right? Everyone listening in, a few hundred people the day we report earnings. I said this should be called a lack of earnings call, not an earnings call. I thought it was funny. I don't think any of the investors found it funny, but we recovered from that. So basically, the only thing we could do was manage costs. There was nothing else to do. If no one's traveling, I can't change it. I mean, the biggest minds in the world haven't been able to tackle COVID. What are we? But we said we can attack costs. Thereafter, the next 7 quarters, we reported 5 profitable quarters because we said, let's attack cost with a vengeance like we've never done before. And let's variabilize costs that we can do. So if business will come between the waves, wonderful, cost base will be low. And we showed that we are a very, very cost variabilized business, asset-light cost variabilized business, which is a dream for every investor, because then they say, wow, they can any storm. They can go through anything because these guys, or rather endure any storm, because these guys have built a kind of cost structure which is entirely calibrated to ups and downs of business. And that's why having a low fixed cost base is so important. So that worked out pretty well. But, I'm just saying we didn't have existentialism crisis. Why? Because this time we had about 250 million on our balance sheet. In fact, between wave and wave 2, wave 1 and 2, we saw a window of opportunity and we had the audacity to go and raise money in a pandemic for a travel business. And we raised another 230 million. So we, sitting comfortable, and then we were printing money by these profitable quarters. So, we're sitting pretty on $500 million. So we didn't have existentialism crisis, but I had a different kind of crisis, which was a morale crisis and a retention crisis. I have never lost more people than we've lost in the pandemic. Why? Because people were saying, A, we don't know when travel will do well. Actually, that was B. The first thing was the boom that was happening in the internet world at large outside travel. So as Raman and me and some of us at TAI, we say, it took a pandemic for India's internet moment to come. For the last 10, 15 years, we've been talking about Indian internet happening and booming and various other things. It took a pandemic because nothing else was working. And suddenly you found online is working. All the naysayers, all those sitting on the fence suddenly said, hey, guess what? I can order meals online and it works. Oh, I was scared to pay online, but guess what? This works. And, slowly they started doing groceries, e-commerce, everything, because those 2 months taught everyone the internet. Fact, 120 million buyers before the pandemic in India, online buyers. Fact, today, 250 million and growing online buyers, more than doubled. So what happened was all these companies were up and away. Second thing happening, all the venture capital and private equity capital and public capital was being pulled out and sucked out of China. China used to take all that money out. Most of the original pools of capital were American, are still American. They didn't want to go to China for, political reasons, etc. Where do they go? Which economy? And they said, look at what's happening. Oh, India used to have 10% of our portfolio, most funds, by the way, 10%. That 10% has moved to 30 to 40% of their portfolio. Some are doing India-only funds because they said, now India is going through what China went through in the 90s or what US went through in the 70s. This is India's internet moment. All this was happening, a lot of capital coming in, companies finally, completely short-circuiting and accelerating to IPO. IPO markets ablaze. You saw 4 or 5 IPOs last year itself. Yes, many of them are under the water, but they maybe went in high valuations. Maybe it was frothy, which is, subject matter for another discussion. But the reality is we had a crazy time. Now, all of them had tons of money to hire and they wanted people. And we became easy pickings. We've always been a company where people, like to hire from. Became easy pickings because people out here were then saying, travel, pandemic, don't know when it'll come back. And when a young engineer is offered 1.5 to 2x of what they're making, let me tell you, all rationality goes out of the window. So you're making 20 lakhs and you've got an offer 30 to 40 lakhs in front of you and someone throwing in all kinds of fancy kind of joining bonuses, etc. It just, you say, we love this company, but, guess what? And so we lost a lot of people and it became a really hard time. So we had a retention crisis. I tried really hard to find other ways, interesting ways. We still have, a lot of folks, but we lost them and, it's very hard. Now they're coming back. So we have a very open policy about people coming back. If they quit nicely for the right reasons, they were good people, we try not to be too fussed about it. There's no ego in business. You can say things like, we'll never take you back, but these are youngsters, these are kids, these are people a little older than most of you. I mean, what do they know? They'll figure out the value of a good company and a good culture only over time. Initial years, it's unfair to even expect people to know that. It's pretty hard. It takes time. So
Deep, what I'm going to do is, this retention issue that you spoke about, which is whatever, 20 years into the company, I want to go all the way back to the tough times. Now, there would have been people who stood by you. These are people, and I'll come to just adding to the team. Maybe this question should have come later, but you raised it. So I'll take this up right now. People that you added to the team that you felt stood by you in the tough times, understood what they had to deliver, were willing to give those 100, 120 hours a week. You said 140, 50 hours a week. I know that there are people staying there. I had a bathroom which had a shower, and people would go and have a shower there, and there was a line outside to have a shower. The toothbrush was only a part of it that they could use wherever. Then there were people who did not stand by, and there were people on which you had belief and faith. So can you talk about these two categories and any learnings that the class can take to say how to be able to spot those traits, spot those aspects, to be able to bring that out?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there's a formula, but I'll tell you what I would use typically. And that's the most important decision you make in working life when you do your own company is the people you hire. It's a pretty...
Just repeat that. The most important decision that you take in the life of a company is the people you hire. That is why this is so goddamn critical.
Yeah, the more senior, the more critical it is, because undoing these is very hard, right? If you get a hire right, it's awesome. So the upside is phenomenal, because then this person is contributing 10x of what they're earning, or they're 20x of what they're earning, or the sky's the limit, right, of what good people can do. But the other side is also true. So if you end up hiring the wrong person, could be a very bright person, but just the wrong fit for your kind of company, then it's very painful. Because you don't get to know that immediately. You start getting doubts of that in 1 or 2 quarters. You start validating that, you hope it's wrong, you give them other chances, you make them work with different people, you try it out for a year, a little bit more, it still doesn't work out. In the process, not only have you lost what you could have built with a great person in that 1 year, this person has actually created a lot of stress around, because this person also becomes negative then. Because it's very clear, right? You're not very liked, you're being moved around, feedback is going. All founders, I think, spend, I don't even know, I think it's 30%, if not more, of their time doing HR. That's the reality, at least in my case. It's the reality, because it's very important. You can't do everything yourself. You're going to motivate your people to do a lot of things. So getting people right. So then what do? You want to make sure that you do everything in your power to hire right. So what can you do? At least for me, after making some mistakes, after hiring people, didn't work out, did realize that, listen, have to make this more scientific, can't just do, one interview and it's done. So I believe in spending a disproportionate amount of time in the interview, interviewing yourself, interviewing multiple times, and getting others to interview, especially those who will be working around, not just who the person will be working for. I believe minimizes the chance of getting I won't say a bad egg. I think a wrong, so a square peg.
A wrong hire. A wrong
Square
hire.
peg. Yeah, just square peg. That's the whole thing, because those people are great for different companies. They're just not the right fit for you. But there's one caveat. You also have to give each and every person who interviews a right of veto. They can't be people who are interviewing and then saying, listen, I don't think the person's right, etc., etc. And then you, being the boss, is just going to kind of steamroll that whole thing and say, no, we're convinced they're good and we don't care what you're saying. No, whoever interviews should have the right of veto. We do believe in that. We say, listen, if you have substantiated. Also, we try not to color each other's views till we have all met. So you meet, I will not tell the other people interviewing, I really like this guy, or I really like this girl. Like, I think, she's fantastic for the company, because that already then colors their view, predisposes them towards a certain way. No, everyone meets and then everyone sends in their feedback to HR, who collates it all, puts it together. Then we have a discussion. I found that helps. I found having a second and a third interview really works. So you meet the person in office first time. Could be 1 hour, could be a little bit more, a little less, whatever, depending. And then next week you say, let's meet outside for a coffee. Or, if the person wants, I think it's great to meet for a drink if both sides want to. You meet for a drink and you get the person at ease. Two things happen. You formed an opinion of this person and you go in with that opinion next time and you suddenly realize, no, this was the person I met in office. This person actually has other dimensions. You also prepare yourself on the areas where you were not convinced and where you're going to quiz the person harder. So there's no point ever interviewing people and asking them what's on their CV. They obviously know what they've done, right? I mean, that would be ridiculous. You have to ask them different things. So what do I test for? I typically test for conviction. So do you have conviction? Do you have your own beliefs? And how hard are you willing to defend them? So something which a Ashoka student should do very well. But I really like pushing people on that, which is on anything. Today, if I was interviewing someone, I definitely would ask them, what's your point of view on the Ukrainian invasion and why? And I would almost definitely take a counter point of view and tell them at the end of the interview that I was just pushing it. But I would say no, but look at it from Russia, because 9 out of 10 would say it's ridiculous, it's terrible, unprovoked. And so look at it from Russia's point of view. They were feeling cornered. Look at it. They were looking at NATO coming all around them. Promises were made to them. I mean, I just want to know how strong you will be on any conviction. I could talk to them on elections in UP, etc., etc. It's interesting to understand.
That is the art of interview, guys. And there is a lot of learning in what he's bringing out.
So you've got to test for that. The second thing, because tomorrow that's what you're hiring them for, right? You're hiring them for being not yes men. You're hiring them for being people who will come in, voice their opinion, have bright ideas. The second thing I like to do always, actually each time, second part of my interview is very simple. What do you think we should be doing that we are not doing? What do you think the company is doing wrong? Now, if someone tells me I haven't spent enough time and I'm not sure, then why are you here? Because, we are a retail business, not like I'm hiring you for, again, a B2B business, which you haven't dealt with. You know us from the outside. Even if you're not our customer, why not? If you are our customer, critique it. So critique our website, critique our app, critique our business. And I love doing that. You don't have to be a product person or this thing. It also shows how much you are interested in the job and how much you're thinking. And again, I will always push people on this and say, no, what's wrong with this, etc., etc. What is better? It's just nice to know. And for me, the third is a very crazy one, but I do test for it. I actually test for, or rather, I try to pick up how interesting people are. Because for me, it's very simple. I have real attention deficit disorder. I mean, I'm telling you, I can't believe I'm going to be talking to you guys for 90 minutes. That's because Raman is so interesting. I get bored. I get bored in all kinds of meetings. I get switched off. I get distracted. I start playing Wordle in the middle of some meetings. It's really sad. This meeting will be hard because I'm speaking, but you never know. So I do all these kind of things. And if I'm going to spend 10 to 20% of my time with this individual who's coming in as my direct report, then the person better stay. otherwise I'm going to be bored. Like, I have to look forward to those meetings. I can tell you, even today, there are people who are, let's say, in the leadership team, who I really look forward to meeting, not because of the business they're running or what they're doing. They bring a different dimension to it. They bring it to life. Even the problems we are discussing, there's always, there's something to it. And like, I think I can say safely, like Raman, I'm also a big sucker for a sense of humor. I think it's very important. It really, really lightens the mood when things are bad, because there's that much you can do. But, if you take it just too seriously, then I think it's, doesn't fit with your own persona. So for me, these are the 3 or 4 things I have found have minimized the chances. They haven't eliminated the chances of hiring a square peg who doesn't fit. We've still hired people who haven't worked out. And after 1 year, we're both, me and Rajesh, who's my active co-founder, who's the CEO of the group, we're both scratching our head and saying, we basically screwed up again. So it happens, right? And you have to admit that the person's not fitting. And then now I've come to the conclusion, when you start getting that doubt, act very fast.
Yeah.
Don't linger it on. Don't let the cancer grow. Don't do a disservice to the person and yourself and the company and everyone around, because you actually now know it's not going to happen. Move on then. It's okay. Cut your losses, cut this thing, and just quickly say this ain't going to happen. Learn from every bad hire. Learn from every failure. Failures are the only ones that teach you. The good times, your head is up in the clouds. You're not learning when you're having good times. You're like celebrating, which you should. But it's only when you're having tough times and something goes wrong, you reflect on it and you say, what happened? Where did we go wrong? Why did it happen, etc. And that's very important, I think, for all of us to know.
Deep, we are a little short of time. The 2 aspects I'd like you to talk about. Attracting the initial team. How did you go about it? Give them your learnings. If they were to do a startup, how do they go about attracting the initial team? And then again, usage of options such as ESOPs, RSUs, stock, cash bonus, etc. What is your learning of all of this, and when is that to be utilized?
Yeah, I think it's business to business, right? So in your own mind, you've got to have absolute clarity. So let's say you do what I do, which is you start alone, or you do what I prescribe and you start with a co-founder. And some of you might start with 2 co-founders or 3. And, I think it becomes harder if you have more, but there's, by the way, a big plus. I think Raman, you had a pretty sizable co-founding team. I know you were the major domo, but you had 4 or 5 people, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And there's a big positive of that too, because then you have 5 or 6 people who you trust, firstly, you worked with in the past, who know their own, businesses or parts of their business very well. So there's a lot of comfort in that too. MakeMyTrip, most famously, they started with 9 people and they pulled it off for quite a while. I mean, it was pretty interesting, but also their maturity. Most of them were already kind of, 50, 60, whatever, and they knew they're comfortable working with each other. They had the maturity to let people, do their own thing. I think it needs a lot more. In the younger days, no one has that maturity. In fact, today, typically the new age founders you're going to be seeing, most of them believe they can do everything. And that's causing a lot of the chaos. Why are so many co-founders leaving? If you read the newspaper, you'd be seeing a lot of co-founders leave. Obviously, there's friction. Yeah, companies doing well and co-founders leaving. Ye kyun hota hai? Ye tabhi ho raha hai because there's friction, right? They're not enjoying, they're not having fun, and they're just saying beyond a certain point, screw it, this is not worth it because I'm, busting my chops and I'm not enjoying. So someone decides to leave. And it's very sad, but that is because I think people get into each other's spaces a lot, and that happens with youth. So I think you've got to be very careful when setting up that team. You've got to have a clear mental map, and then you have to reduce that to paper. And you got to say, this is what my senior team is going to look like. What are the skill sets that I need? And therefore, what are the kind of people I need? Mind you, some people can bring multiple skill sets to the table. So horses for courses is true, but also I can tell you in the early days, the kind of people you need are people who are not too fussed about why am I doing this? They are what I call cricket analogies. So sorry for those who don't like cricket, but who are all-rounders. You'll give them the ball, they'll take the ball and they'll run with it. If they have to do data entry, they'll do data entry. If they've got to go out there and do market research on themselves, they'll do that. If they've got to hop onto a flight like right away to get to Bombay to talk about an important contract with someone, they'll do that. They're not fussed. They're saying, we have to do it. You need that. Beyond a certain stage of maturity of a business, you start needing more and more specialization. So what happens to the people who are really good all-rounders, but now they're not very good specialists? So I definitely believe that you should retain those people, and all new areas of business you should give to them. I believe the person who's done this brilliantly is Sunil Mittal at Airtel, where he was very clear in saying this CEO can take me from 100 to 1,000, but not from 1,000 to 10,000, and definitely not 10,000 to 100,000. I need different kind of people, but I still want to hold on to some of my early stage people who were very good at new ventures, new businesses, because those are the people who are, like I said, they're not fussed about what am I doing. So you make your mental map, you reduce it on paper. What are the kind of people you're looking for? And then as you go about interviewing and getting people either through the known network, which also helps, by the way. The point I didn't mention in hiring is referencing. I think referencing is damn important. So firstly, never bother to call up any of the references that have been given on the CV by the candidate. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a complete waste of time. Whoever would put a reference of someone who's going to say this person not so great, right? You already have that person taped up for whatever reason. Please do references more smartly. Please reference people from other angles on how you can find out how they were through someone else. And that's what it takes. I mean, you can, your recruitment agency can do that, but ideally try to do it yourself, either you or the head of HR. Do it on a call. Involve, not just an email, you get some answer. It's not a ticking the box. Probe for areas of improvement. The good stuff everybody knows. What is the not so good stuff? And by and large, if people say something like this was a little, this could be improved, please multiply that by a factor of 2 or 3. That is an issue. If someone is raising an orange flag, it's actually a red flag. That's why people don't like to say bad things about people. But if you're picking that up, take that seriously. Don't let your ref check be a self-fulfilling prophecy where you just, again, like I said, ticking that box and saying, I want to hire the person, let's get it done. No. You can save a month in hiring, but you will pay for it in years if you get the hiring wrong. Just keep that in mind. There's always a fire to hire. There's always a fire. We need this person as of yesterday. This is not happening. But if you just get someone because it's expedient and it's efficient, you'll probably regret it, because the good people are not easy to get. They're obviously being loved where they are, and they're doing a good job where they are. So to lure them out, to get them to work for you, takes a lot more. So I would say that part. Coming to the financial instruments, I think the best financial instrument ever designed for a startup or for any company where they want to give people the opportunity to also create wealth was some form of an option, right? So it used to be called ESOP, or a lot of it now has become RSUs, which I think are much better, much more employee friendly. RSUs hold you in good stead. Even if the chips are down, even the price, let's say your strike price when you came in, a share was trading in the informal or the formal market at 100. COVID happens, the share goes down to 60 for a travel company. If it was an RSU, you're still in the money. You don't have to buy it as an option. You've got to actually buy it. So you're not in the money till you're 100 or over. So we did change to RSUs all along. We came along with a new variant. Why is it such a beautiful instrument? So it's such a beautiful instrument because it aligns the goals of the company and the individual completely. Completely. Company does well, you do well. As simple as that. Also, it serves as a good retention tool, right? Because typically you'll give these over 4 years, 5 years. We have a 4-year plan. It used to be 10, 20, 30, 40. So we actually had a pretty tough plan, but I was a big believer that, listen, if people stick, first year, again, made a mistake, someone's come in, someone doesn't like the company too, they walk out, shouldn't get more than 10% or ideally nothing. But some companies do 25, 25, 25. Then we came up with a new variant of the RSU, which is a PSU, which it's a performance linked stock unit. So basically, there's a performance element built in, which is not just company performance, but your own performance, which also I think there's nothing wrong. Obviously, it's not as friendly as an RSU. So typically, we use a blend. Half your stock comp comes in RSU, half of it comes as a PSU. Good for good people, good for the company, not so good for people who are enjoying the free ride. Do you want people enjoying the free ride? Clearly not. So at the end of the day, it's good to have something which is linked to performance. We're all about that. All startups are high performing units. And if you don't have that, then again, you're not being true to everyone. So yeah, I think, but great instruments, I think. And I remember doing—
So the one question that comes out of ESOPs, RSUs, I guess PSUs is a little downstream. At what stage of evolution should a startup look at ESOPs or RSUs or any way of this kind of compensation for hiring a team? At what stage of evolution?
So I think it's something you need to offer right in the beginning, because it's cheap. It's easiest to do in the beginning. You know, your company is probably valued at whatever, under 10 million, right? Most startups are single digit million, unless some rock star founder doing another startup. It's very easy to go convince your investor, we need to have an ESOP pool, we need to have this, it's 5% and replenish. I'm yet to meet any investor who has issues around replenishing of ESOP pools, so long as the founders aren't taking the lion's share of it. That is blatantly wrong. But if that's being used to incentivize team, I'm yet to meet investors. So my formula was very simple. I would go to my board and I had investors and I would say, you know, we need another 5%. And guess what? I'm ready to dilute my share for it. Which investor is not going to do that? And I would be ready to do it simply because I said I need people and I need to offer them not just decent salaries. They probably won't be the best salaries, but I want to offer them a good upside. We had a clear plan after 2005. We thought now we're out of the woods. We did go an IPO in 2010, and great pride in saying 70% of our team at that point of time had stock. And so while the company did great on the IPO, the investors made a lot of money. The most gratifying thing for any founder and has to be the fact that you know, your employees did well, who gave you their sweat and toil. And I have to tell you a wonderful story here to further drive home the point to Raman that I don't forget anything. So Raman, while I was doing duty for you at this award ceremony where you were the chair of the jury of BW Disrupt, but since you decided not to show up, I actually went for the awards and I had to do that speech on behalf of the jury and you. And I was telling these young founders who were there as the top 40 who won the Business World 40, Disrupt 40 under 40. And I said, I've never forgotten something which Raman, who's the missing in action chairman of the jury, told me 20 years ago. And you know what he said was, or maybe 15 years ago, he says, "Sabse meetha laddu," quote unquote. I don't think he remembers.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
Yeah, he says, "Sabse meetha laddu wo hota hai jo aapke saath jo kaam kar rahe hain wo greh pravesh ka jo dabba aata hai laddu ka." And they give you that, and they said, I have bought a house, my first house, thanks to the money or the wealth that I created with SpectrumMind, with MakeMyTrip, with Naukri, with whatever company. And thanks to that, and this is someone who would have never got a house maybe for another 20 years, managed to do that because that piece of paper, which was called a stock option, and this kid, this youngster, this simpleton never even questioned you. Why are you giving me 1,000 or 1,200? What are these? He just put them away. Like that story of, you know, Narayan Murthy's driver or something like that. He just put them, it was there and one fine day stock and suddenly they were worth 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, 1 crore, 3 crores. So people were like, wow. And the guy says like, I never even thought I had, this is worth anything because I was really, so, you know, it's so true. So those of you who do go ahead and set up your companies, please err on the side of being extravagant when it comes to ESOP for the team. Founders, there's enough. Fight with your investors for every share. Fight with them for every percent. Fight with them for every rights. Negotiate with them, etc. Do all of that. But when it comes to your team, make sure that they are also getting more than their fair share, especially those who are sticking it out. There's another trick. There's another catch, right? So there's a cliff. The cliff is what happens after 4 years. Supposing you have a 4-year vesting. And you made it rear-ended. So like my plan initially, you had 10, 20, 30, 10% first year, 20% second year, 30% third year, 40% fourth year. 4 saal ho gaye, all done. There's a big risk of attrition then. People leave. And the only way to do that, to ensure that you don't have that big risk or that big chasm where people will suddenly check out because they'll say there's nothing in it now, is to have a rolling plan or a continuous plan. So now most mature companies have annual grants. So along with the comp and the appraisals that will happen, effective 1st April or 1st Jan, whatever calendar you run, they'll also keep giving you more grants with a new vesting schedule. So those new grants will have their own 4-year. The next year will have their own 4 years. So you have a smoothing of the curve. You never have a crazy cliff, which is mature thinking. But then, it's a finite amount of capital and a finite amount of shares. You can't keep doing that. So at some point, you've got to get very, very discerning about who gets the lion's share. And you've got to know your A team. You've got to know your A players. The A players across the organizations are the one that you ring fence. You ring fence them that they are, and very hard to do with cash, and you shouldn't do it with just cash and bonuses. Do it with stock. Of course, you'll do it with a lot of personal motivation and pump them up and everything else, which is great. But you also do it with stock, and they are the A players. The A minus or the B plus can also get into A the next year. It's not like this group is a halo group and no one can touch them. It's a continuous group. A can also churn out if they get complacent. But you need to be very clear. And that I learned in GE actually. GE was these are times of Jack Welch where he used to say very clearly, take super care of your top 10%, the A's, the B's, and also weed out the bottom 10%, the D's, which was a little ruthless. But weeding out is a second thing, but knowing your A players and ring fencing them is so critical, because every time you lose an A player, I think it's equivalent to losing 3 or 4 average folks or your typical foot soldiers. So you'd really need to take care. And these A players can be at the junior most level. They can just be an engineer who's an A player because they're so good at what they do.
And they're so tough to replace.
They're very tough, very painful.
They are very tough to replace. So replacing an A with another A and finding another A is so challenging. Yeah. So Deep, while I still have a bunch, we could go on and on talking. Keeping the time in view, I would open it up for questions of the class to you. We have overextended by about 10 minutes, so I hope you have 5-10 minutes beyond 4:45.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so questions for Deep. There it goes. There go the hands. Okay, Krisha, I saw you first. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Deep. It was lovely listening, and just you're so inspiring. I guess I had 2 questions. Firstly, I think that when MakeMyTrip came into the industry, it really disrupted the entire travel agency and that usual business that a lot of, you have to go to a travel agent and actually get a ticket issued, etc. And I think since this company came into the picture in early 2000s, I think that it must have taken a lot of disruption. So I guess I wanted to ask you about how you kind of dealt with changing with the times, because it was a very significant journey that you've kind of gone ahead with. So how did you change and shape your business model with what you were experiencing? And maybe if you had a couple examples of how you fit it so people actually listen and you can actually have more customers.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely question, Krisha. So, earlier on, I think in the very early days, and like I said, in October, we launched our business. We launched our website, which was actually meant to cater to people from India traveling within India, out of India, and also to India. And within 3 months, and the only thing we did was sell air tickets, because at that point of time, that seemed to be the most wanted and the easiest kind of thing to do. What we found within 3 months was that people in India were not converting, were not booking too many. So we had lots of lookers, very few bookers, as I call it. But the conversion rate from US to India, non-resident Indians in the US, that was very high. And the more we dug into it, we realized why, because those folks were comfortable buying online. They knew it was safe. They'd already kind of, worked with sites like, Expedia and Travelocity, and they knew. So they were working out well. But in India, it was such early days of the internet, 2000. People were doubting that paying online will work out. So they were actually saying, listen, I'm going to take a printout of this and go to my travel agent. There were no kind of screenshots. It wasn't on the mobile, obviously, then. So people were just saying, internet pe to ye daam mil raha hai. So this is what I'm getting on internet. I'm getting on MakeMyTrip. I'm getting this. And the travel agent would, reluctantly kind of match those prices, the offline travel agent. So first thing we did was very quickly, within 3 months, we said, stop marketing in India, stop wasting money. Most of our competitors kept marketing in India, and I think they, ended up kind of, most of them shut down because, their market wasn't ready. Now, cut 10 years forward or 15 years forward, people can expedite that market getting ready by throwing discounts and cashbacks. Did not exist. It was a very kind of, sane time compared to this. So you could never go below your cost price. It was unheard of, right? You had to make at least a rupee or a paisa on every unit and then sell millions of units or whatever. So I think we tweaked that, and we focused for the next 4 years on a very small but fertile market. We kept our Indian website open, but just focused on the NRI market, which kept our fires burning, which made us profitable, which helped us stand on our own. So I think that really worked out. That was a kind of a pivot in a way, but the real deal for us was always to be in India. So 2005, why I launched in India, or rather started spending money in India, took venture capital, by the way, all over again. After having sworn I'll never take venture or vulture capital, as I called it then. But I took it again for the simple reason, because to build a brand in India, it became very clear you need a lot more capital than what we had. Secondly, things had changed. So market changes. What had changed was people were getting comfortable on the internet in these 5 years. Indian Railways gave people the confidence, IRCTC, that it's safe to pay online. Secondly, I found an opportunity that technology could solve very well, which was the advent of low-cost carriers. Low-cost carriers were advertising. Air Deccan came first. They said 999 Delhi to Bangalore. Maybe there were just 4 seats. You said, wow, you saw a big billboard saying Bangalore, Delhi, 999. You called up your travel agent saying, I want this. Travel agent had no incentive to sell that ticket. Why? 2 reasons. Very little commission, if at all, on that. Secondly, you had to pay upfront. Now, if the travel agent paid on his card, but the customer on the other side of the line, let's say Krisha, changed her mind and said, I don't want to go now, the travel agent was out of pocket. We solved that with technology. We built direct connects. We saw that opportunity. I said, we'll go to these low-cost carriers. We'll get into their host system. We'll build a direct connect, say we'll offer your inventory straight to our customers. So we built direct connect with each and every low-cost carrier. It took months the first time. Finally, we explained it, how it works, etc. Got all the content and meshed it with the full service carriers and gave it to customers in a less refined form that you see today, but the same kind of logic. And that met with instant success. For the first time, the Indian traveler, I think, felt I'm in control. Now I'm choosing, I want to pay $500 more and get extra leg room and meals. I want to pay 1,000 rupee less and travel at 5 a.m. in the morning with less leg room, no meal, whatever, that's my call. And that was a very heady mix. So the travel agent lost what they brought to the table, a little bit of service and all. You could book on your own. People were already comfortable online. Then we doubled down on India. Then the next pivot, we said, now I think the market's getting ready to sell hotels online. So by the time we IPO'd, we were still 90% air ticketing and 10% hotel, but the hotel opportunity was growing. And it's a much better market because it's very fragmented. In airlines, you've got 6 players in India and 20 players international, coming into India. But the hotel market, we've got several 100,000 hotels, and now with homestays, we've got millions of places. So we have more leverage as an intermediary. So then we pivoted further. So you have to keep your eyes and ears open on the changing market needs and keep tweaking your product. Now we get 56% of our revenues coming from accommodation, and air contributes only 30%. So it's a dramatically different business and a much healthier business. But I think the big lesson out here is customers are changing, customer needs are changing, and you can't be so fixated on your original business model saying, I'm not going to move it. No, you got to be very open to change because that's what it's about. So be very steadfast, better word than stubborn, be very steadfast about, I want to build a great company and a great service, but don't be so rigid about how you're going to do it. Because technology is changing everything so fast If you're fixated on that, I'll tell you another secret actually. When it was only web, there was a point of time where I can tell you there was another company which had a better web experience than us. And it just really bothered me. A company was ClearTrip and they were doing a very good job on the web. But then the app opportunity came and we made up our mind we're only going to focus on app. And we are going to be an app first company or a mobile first company. And we made sure that we are the finest game in town. So I think you have to grab these opportunities which seem like longer term. Now, Krishna, not all bets.
First see the opportunity and then grab it. I mean, both are important. And
not
that is
all
the
bets,
role of the founding team.
Correct. And not all bets pay off. Let me tell you that. So you make mistakes. Going back to, if you make a mistake, perfectly all right. Learn from that mistake. Don't create the same one again. Lots of hands up, 433. So
yeah, 433. Yeah, Shivansh, go ahead. Deep agreed. He'll stay 5-10 minutes more.
Yeah, no problem.
So don't burst into tears yet.
Thank you so much for your talk. So one thing that really caught my eye was you talking about giving equity to the right people. I just wanted to ask, from the other side of the table, as a student just coming out of college where you want to work at startup, how do you think we should be going by asking for equity from these founders? So if a person who came up to you is a smart guy.
I got it. Yeah, I think depending on the stage of the company, right? So if you were to maybe join a much larger company, let's even say MakeMyTrip right now, maybe entry level, I think we look at it after a year now for engineers, product folks, etc. I have to tell you, one of the brightest guys we hired in the last few years was from Ashoka. Such an incredible guy. He worked very, very closely with me. Now he's doing his own startup. And I don't think we've had a guy like him in the longest, a guy called Vikrant Kadian. I think 4 years ago, he joined us, spent a couple of years and worked on special projects for me. And every place he worked, he just did really well. So I think we were happy that he got some equity. But if you join, let's say, an earlier stage startup, so really who's between, I don't know, Series B, Series C, or Series C, Series D, it's a really good thing to ask for. I think it'll be seen very well if you ask it. See, by the way, anything that you say or ask for is not a bad thing. It's all about how you say it. So packaging is everything. You can, even when you hear, right, you hear about giving feedback and this and that. So let me tell you, IQ is very important and all of you must be very smart, should be if you got into Ashoka. But once you get into the work field, EQ becomes even more important. And if your emotional quotient is not high, your chances of going up in corporate life are very low. EQ is damn important, which is how to get along with people, how to give tough feedback, but give it nicely, how to say that you're totally messed up, but say it in such a way that you don't completely piss off the other person. So same way, you go and ask this question, it can come across as very cocky. And the person interviewing you can say, you know, what the hell does Shivansh think of himself? And we don't want this kind of guy. But if you put it across in a way saying, listen, I'm really excited about joining a startup, et cetera, I'm happy to commit, good amount of time, etc. But for me, it would be amazing if I could also get a small, thin, tiny slice of equity of your company kind of thing. So that's what it's about. It's how you say it. The other person will say, wow, I would be, by the way, the other test I do is trade-off. So when comp packages are discussed, I actually say, how about 10% less cash comp, cash meaning obviously what you get cash comp, but 20% more stock. I'm just testing because it's great to know people who like more stock because obviously they're the right kind of people. And I love it when people say, I'll take less cash. That's the other way to say it, Shivansh. You're not offering this. This is your standard offer. I understand. What if I can take a cut in my cash comp, but trade it off for stock? Slightly better as 1:1, right? Because cash is cash in hand. Stock takes some time. So 1:2 or 1:1.5. I think it'll be well received. So I would receive it very well. So it's how you say it. Okay.
Pratik.
Yeah. Thank you for this insightful talk. I have multiple questions, but I will stick to two questions, skipping the time.
One. Okay, go ahead.
I will keep. So my first question is more about hiring process that we were talking about, and you talked about how we need more smart people. And I don't think, as the industry is changing, there is need of more smart people. And I don't think 2 pages of CV or resume do justice to it. So I would like to know how the hiring process need to be changed so more smart people who don't have a lot of thing on their CV or resume or just fresh graduates like us get into the right place and make to the companies that they need to work. And my second question comes from my personal experience, and I wanted to know a little about MakeMyTrip. So I have been using a lot of travel website to booking my flights, and one thing that I know, there are websites like Skyscanner which compare all the flights and give you the lowest flight ticket. And one thing that I've always noticed is MakeMyTrip or GoIbibo are the website that doesn't come in that list of giving the lowest flight ticket. So I just wanted to know what makes them not to offer the lowest flight ticket despite other players who are able to offer you the lowest flight ticket in the same sector.
Okay, let's try to answer both. One is on the topic, but the second is also interesting. So, Pratil, I think it's the interview process. I think good companies are going beyond. The CV is only for filtering. And that's what it is, as simple as that. You filter, but really in the interview, that's your opportunity to impress, right? Everyone will give you some time to talk about. So you call it an elevator pitch or an interview pitch. Practice 20 times, practice 100 times. Be ready to get your 5 minutes of fame. And in that 5 minutes of fame, you've got to put across who you are. That's your pitch. And if you can't do that, then you'll get that. The CV is the rest. And luckily, you're from Ashoka. What if you're not from Ashoka? What if you're from a place that doesn't even meet the cut? I feel very bad because India has so many colleges. And we all know that, people, there's a very fine line between people who make it to one college and just miss out. I know the process, obviously, on Ashoka on hiring. We try to make it more holistic. But look at the process in IIT and IIMs. It's ruthless, right? It's how you felt that day. If your brain was working a little faster, what you ate the previous day, it's like very little things it does. And the saddest part is that corporate life and working life is not a speed test. So I feel really bad about it because that test, and that is why, Ashoka is looking at a holistic application, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll get the same in some companies, and maybe that's how you should select your companies who are willing to go beyond that. But the fact that the CV will help you filter, the only other way is to shamelessly network, to find ways and to say, give me a chance, give me a 15-minute interview, blah, blah, blah. Make a video interview of yourself, send it to people, make a 5-minute video and send it. Who's stopping you? If you really want to get into a company who's not coming to you, go out and say 5 minutes of your time. I mean, be innovative in your approach. And that shows how, this thing. Your second question is more business model. So I think you mentioned Kayak and Skyscanner. So they are meta search engines, right? And then they point you to the different airlines. We don't believe we need to bid for the domestic ones. We've consciously stayed away. We have, 1 in 3 tickets sold in the country is sold by one of our brands. And we've got 30% plus market share without like crazy discounting. We're more about taking care and making sure that, you'll always have not only that seat, but you have a good experience. Something goes wrong, you can reach people, blah, blah, blah. So I think people are constantly trying to be a little cheaper. Also, people play bait and switch. So sometimes you'll go there, by the time you end up paying at the end of the day, it'll be the same. So all those kind of practices happen. So go down the line and you'll see what's happening, and good way to prepare for a meeting. So if you get a good way to prepare for an interview, if you get an interview call and you've done this work and you say, I want to share it, I can assure you, you've already got the attention. There's so many ways of getting the attention. Link it back to my meeting, my distress sale buyout from eVentures or of eVentures. Get into the shoes of the other side. You're going for an interview. You're meeting an HR person. Be clear, what does an HR person want?
What do they want? Yes.
HR person only wants conversion numbers. They have to get people. Then you're meeting the product head. What does the product person want, or whatever you're applying for? A really smart guy with a product bent of mind. And when I say guy, I mean guy or gal. So be ready with this kind of argument for that interview, and your chance of impressing are higher. Okay, Sahaj.
Hi, Deep. So my question is that when you're the first to do anything, like you are a big test you face to defend your position when more players rush in. So I wanted to understand from you, like, how did you deal with something like that? Or what was the mindset 10 or 15 years back when you started?
Sorry, when people rushed in, I didn't get the first part. So
the first part, that when you're the first to do anything.
Okay. When you're a pioneer and then many come in.
Yeah.
So Sahaj, being a pioneer is high risk, but it's also very high return. It's high risk because there's no one to copy, no one to ape. But why it's high return? When you strike gold and something starts working, striking gold means great conversion, great repeaters happening. You don't announce that to the world. You know the secret sauce. And let me tell you, most of the time, the secret sauce is under the hood. It's under the hood is a term which comes from the automobile industry. It's in the bond, it's in the engine basically, and no one knows it. So it's the algo at the back, whether it's a ranking algo, whether it's a rating algo, whatever is working for you, you don't announce that to the world. So if you're ready to be a high risk, high reward player, it's great. People will come, they will copy. But if someone is coming and copying, by and large, they're already saying, I've accepted you as the market leader. I'm like kind of copying you. They'll never figure out when you strike gold. So I think copying and playing the same game, you can say, imitation is the best form of flattery, but it shows someone's not innovative. So we've seen many people who are just copying the same thing. Their chances of success I've seen are less, rather than people trying to do it in a different way altogether. They are the real competitors who come from the far left, new technologies. So we're very wary of them. And I'm definitely in Andy Grove's camp of only the paranoid survive. So my job is to scan the environment all the time. Okay, Anya.
Hi, I just wanted to understand what your initial marketing strategy was to actually drive people to come to your website and then book their tickets online.
Yeah.
And I have another question.
So let's take one from each, guys. We have a lot of hands
Anya,
up.
can we restrict to one? We are a little
we've got a lot of hands up. So Anya, I'll give you the one when we launched in India. So in India, it's more interesting because, we were now clear that we've got a good thing going. And the mandate I gave our agency then was very simple. I said, I just want people to come to our website. The rest of the website will do. Why? Because I was so sure our proposition is a killer proposition. Remember what I was saying, which is we are putting the customer in control. So everything was around that. So we went ahead with something which was best fare guarantee. Now, these kind of things didn't happen in 2005 in India. It used to happen in the US. Now it happens everywhere. This didn't happen. It was a kind of a clutter breaker. And we did best fare guarantee, brought people to the site, and then the site did the rest. So you have to be very clear. What is your proposition? And your brief, the more succinct your brief is to your agency, the clearer you will get options back. They gave many options, and we went with best fare guarantee. So to start with in 2005 when we launched in India. In US, we just didn't have enough market. We just did online marketing. We did a little bit and we saw what we got from it. But we typically went with like banners saying $699 to India and things like that. So very, very basic stuff. Okay, Kritin.
Hello. So I just wanted to know that initially you spoke about sharing a dashboard with your employees and how they could see each and every metric and how they were performing. But as you scaled and grew bigger, I'm sure you'd have come with a problem where you don't know each and every employee or their intentions. So how do you reach that balance to prevent oversharing data with employees, and how have your thoughts about that changed since you were a small company versus now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And even today, clearly not 3,000 people, but I think probably a few hundred people, like in every line of business, whether it's flight tickets, rail tickets, intercity bus tickets, hotels, homestays, holidays, etc. In each of them, I think 20, 30 people would be in the know of everything, and then F&A. So maybe a couple of hundred people know. There's no great secret in that. We're a public company. We're anyway going to report out our numbers every quarter. The secret is not in that. The secret is definitely in the code. And it's also, that is that secret sauce of how you do business. अगर ये numbers का leak हो भी गए, क्या हो जाएगा? I mean, is the way I look at it. Sure, someone will know, but we are anyway reporting the right numbers. The people who are bothered about the numbers getting out are who don't report the right numbers. We report the right numbers, so we can't publish it all, but on a consolidated basis. But I would like anyone working in a unit to at least know the headline numbers, how much we did here. So we have a DSR, a daily sales report. So if you're working in, let's say, alternate accommodation or homestays, I want you to know how much we sold every day by city, by premium category, what you're doing. Otherwise, you're shooting in the dark. Are we doing good? Are we doing bad? So I think it's only normal. Do you need to know the whole consolidated picture? You'll get to know that anyway on a quarterly basis, and some people on a weekly basis. So, but fundamentally, you got to trust people also. Like, I don't think that's the secret sauce of sharing, honestly. So, Gautam.
Yeah, so last semester we had to research failed startups, and a lot of those were service startups and like homestay startups and etc. And a reason which was very common was dissatisfaction of customers, and how did you strike the balance between customer satisfaction in a industry where it is very important? Because flight booking, there are always multiple problems. There are different problems all the time.
Yeah, in flight booking, most of the issues have actually come up only because either COVID disruption or, airlines like Air India who are going through terrible time, not giving refunds. So it becomes a big headache because if we are selling 30% odd of tickets, then we are getting 30% all of the angst also. But, there's no balance between customer service. If you're not doing your best on customer service, eventually you'll die. Someone else will come and do a good job. So there's nothing that can counterbalance. The only counterbalance there is, Gautam, how much are you going to spend on it? So how many, maybe you were trying to say that, how many people are you going to throw at customer service, which is at post sales? Is that a cost for you, or do you fundamentally look at that as something which, is critical? And the formula we have found is throw people, but keep learning and then automate what you can. So the idea is through MakeMyTrips or through our chatbots, continuously get people onto the self-service, which is obviously then more scalable. But the nature of our business, there'll always be last minute stuff. You'll always have people out there who I think you need to be taking care of with customer care. So it's really hard in COVID time when we were cutting costs. That was the biggest problem. A lot of people were actually calling and they wanted to get their refund or wanted to get a credit shell. But the reality was, listen, we couldn't afford people. So we had very few people. So it was a very, very tough time to balance out there. Today, I would even overinvest in customer service, but only with one caveat, which is keep learning, keep automating. So only corner cases, 5 or 10% is where you need people. The rest of it should be automated. And your self-serve automation should be so good that people would rather do that than wait for 10, 15 minutes on the line to speak to someone. So that would be my overarching thing. Nitin?
Yes, thank you. So I had a question regarding the act quick, doubting and then acting quick bit. So some of the leaders I've heard saying that they prefer giving a bit extra time before acting on that, whether they have the potential or whether what you thought as the potential can be realized. So how do we strike the balance between that? I mean, sometimes a person might be going through a personal challenge that is then eventually impacting their professional life as well.
Yeah. No, I got your question, Nitin. So it's a good question. I don't think you want to be trigger happy out there. It's not like one person that if you had a council of 6 people interview the person, then you should have that council of minimum 6, if not more, decide if the person is fitting in or not fitting in. It can't be like, boom, this is not happening. And you have to understand, so it can't be in isolation. You have to have conversations. So you can't suddenly after 6 months say 9 months, buddy, it ain't working. You've got to be having, as a manager, at the end of the day, you've got to be having conversation and saying, why? See, your manager, I'm a big believer in manage your flock. If this manage your flock comes from having basically a pastor in a church, and the pastor knew everyone coming to the church. Now, if you know your flock, and in GE, they used to say the golden rule is you should have direct reports should be between 1 hand and 2 hands, between 5 and 10 or something like that, which is probably right. Some people would have too many. You should know your direct reports, even if they're 10. And that's all. If you're a good manager, you know your direct reports and that chain of command is working, the whole organization then is working well. But if you're a weak manager, then you don't know. So I would always ask the manager, what's the issue out here? Is there a real problem going on, etc.? That's the way it works. So I might be too far away from this person who's joined, but someone works with him directly every day and someone works with her directly every day, and they should know, is there an issue? Is there a fitment issue? Is there a boss issue? Sometimes the boss issue, and that is why you have HR spokes or you have HR people you can reach out to and tell that, listen, I have a problem with my boss. And that can happen. And if we get 3 or 4 inputs that people have a problem with their boss, then we know where the issue is. So it gets far more complicated than an individual coming in. What about if people have a way of working which is not the best way? So it's complex and you should definitely not rush it. Okay, I'm just going in order with what I'm seeing. Suhina?
Hi, thank you for your time. So I was just wondering, especially with travel's sort of precarious position when it comes to these crises like COVID and the 9/11 and SARS, as you mentioned, do you see possibility for travel companies to re-strategize in future business model development to kind of tackle that challenging position or that risky position that travel right now occupies, being the first and hardest hit each time?
Yeah, it's going to be hard. I wish. And I used to always think around it. I think it's pretty hard because that's the nature of the beast, right? The beauty of travel is that you actually get out of where you are and you go and see new places, you meet new people, etc., etc. It's exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do in a pandemic like COVID, which spreads so fast. So I think it's going to be hard. But the good news is I think people have learned to live with it. So you've also learned, I think the one thing which became very clear is that travel's fairly safe if you do it safely. Like it's not travel. Most people get it when you let your guard down with familiar circumstances. So what I like to tell people is why travel is safe is you're going to unfamiliar places. So the safest place, ironically for me, is an airport and an airplane because everyone's got their guard up. Everyone's careful. The most dangerous places where you're meeting people, socializing over a meal, and you drop your guard. So I think it's going to be around that. Homestays have done really well. Everyone wanted to be in a homestay. I'm a big believer that we are now over the worst. I'm also a born optimist. But we don't have time to think about it, but it was very tempting to think of diversifications. We thought about a lot. And finally, we kind of decided, let's just keep doing some of this well. The most exciting thing, by the way, we did in the pandemic, and I love talking about it, is in the first wave where we built Arogya Setu from scratch. So we're 20 of us who worked on it and had the idea, proposed it to Niti Aayog, got the opportunity to build it for the government. It was pro bono. We made no money and we ran it till 50 million downloads. After 100 days, we handed it over. But that was the most thrilling thing we could do. So, I think you find joy in different things. And we could do that because, if it was our first, if we didn't have money, then we'd want to be charged for it. But we wanted to do this as a service. So I don't have a great answer for you, but I'll take a couple more before we have to wrap up. I have something at 5 I have to get on to. So Yashraj?
Good afternoon, sir. In a different course, we recently hosted Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma, and he was talking about Paytm wallet and UPI and his future. I wanted to understand what competition does MMT face from Paytm, especially that, they have a wallet and they have users on their ecosystem more likely to keep spending on the ecosystem. So is MMT looking at a wallet or something?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and super apps is basically what it is. So I think, and Paytm was one of the first super apps, and they got into travel in a big way. I think they finally kind of realized that the super app thing works for some kinds of travel. So I think it worked for them for rail tickets, which is very price sensitive, and maybe intercity bus tickets. It hasn't really worked beyond that. Like I think the air market share is still in like middling single digits, etc. Every time they give a discount, people buy, but then that's not tenable. And as you've seen now, they've gone public and they have a lot of pressure from the markets of showing actually any path to profitability. Hotels, they disbanded, they built up 100-odd people team, disbanded it totally. So it's easier said than done. Super app is great, I think, where you're buying a plain vanilla product. So ticketing, I consider, a simple product. It's two-dimensional typically. What's the time? What's the price? Sometimes who's the carrier? But hotels and all gets far more complex. So that's our real moat. And that's the reason I said why we've gone into accommodations in such a big way 10 years ago, because that's the real moat. Eventually, if it's an Indigo flight, some of you might say, listen, if I'm saving 100 rupees, I'll take it. But the reality of life is that most customers like to move up and they like to keep going up and working with a company where they're more comfortable. And over time, they say, we see that, by the way, between GoIbibo and MakeMyTrip. GoIbibo is our younger brand, Dealsy brand, etc. And we find over time, people keep moving up and they're saying, listen, they move to MakeMyTrip. And when we interview them, we do a lot of customer labs. I attend all of them. I love them. Learn a lot. People say, wo pehle karte the. What do you mean pehle karte the? It's just student the, paise kam the, GoIbibo pe hote. That kind of thing happens. So people aspire to move up the value chain over time. And frankly, we want the top 50% of customers in the country. I don't think, or at least the top 70, we don't want the bottom 30% because they turn on a dime. It's as simple as that. We're still a value country. Okay, Swarna, quick, sharp question, and then I'll try to answer quickly.
Yeah. So my question is, should early stage founders, sort of outsource some of their operations like customer support or delivery or something like that? or should they handle it themselves, like areas which are non-core components of the business?
Yeah, no, great question. So, in the early days, we even outsourced technology, and it was the biggest mistake we made. So, but customer support, I think it's nice to have a thin layer, like a command team is what we call it, who is aware of the kind of questions. So for me, customer support is where you learn a lot. And that gives you the best clues on how to improve products. So you should have a thin layer or an escalation layer which does that. But you can outsource also, but quality and everything else matters. Also, early stage if you have enough money. So initially, I'm a big believer, learn your own stuff, every part of the process completely before outsourcing. आपने पहले ही outsource कर दिया तो you may not never know how to actually improve that. Okay, Rochan, is that how you pronounce it?
Right, so that's correct. I'll just continue with my question. So I just wanted to know, like many times when people are applying for a position, they apply many times without thinking, do they really want it or not? And like you mentioned in the process, after interviewing them, if you actually want to get them on board, has it ever happened that after you have cleared them after multiple rounds of interview, you are not, the candidate actually says, I'm still considering, or they keep you on hold rather than the other way around? And in addition to that, how does it work?
All the time. Sad. Yeah, it's a buyer's market, my friends. So especially if you're in tech or you're in product or you're in design, it's such a hot market. What I said earlier, most guys have 3 offers at any point of time. We had to usually give 2 offers to get 1. And anyone, this is not us. I was exchanging notes with Google and Amazon, and they said they're going through the same stuff. So it's really hard. And people, that day we interviewed someone who later told us he has 6 offers with him. And so I don't even know what's going on, but that is the reality. It's painful. Okay, last question. I guess I saw your hand, Ridhima, and Aditya also had it. We'll try to take both, but it's 1 minute. Quick question.
Thanks for your insights. The quick question that I had for that, people of my age increasingly are looking at purpose more than just money and stocks when they're joining a company. So how at MakeMyTrip have you ensured that the purpose is aligned with what employees are looking for? And how can startups build that purpose?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It took us a while to understand that. When you go to our site or our app, you'll also see the MakeMyTrip Foundation. Take a look at that, what we're doing. We used to do that first, little less kind of scientifically. We would ask people to give a little bit of money to offset the carbon footprint that they're making. We've done that for 12, 13 years, by the way. And thanks to that money and some of ours, we've planted 1.1 million trees now. And we're doing a bunch of other stuff. But a few years ago, we kind of formalized it all in a foundation. And our goal is sustainable tourism. Clearly, travel does impact the planet, but it's still, a thing we want everyone to do. So how can you then make sure that some of this stays sustainable? So that's our purpose. And we think for me, that's one of the most exciting areas also. I'm very personally involved with that. Okay, Aditya, we'll take your question and then wrap up.
Thank you. Recently, a lot of Indian youth wants to do their own startup. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to do something themselves when they realize that they have good skills. And moreover, there is a lot of discouragement to do jobs and do work for someone else. So do you think that there is going to be a shortage of talent for Indian companies?
Yeah, well, that's, I think, been the irony how it's changed, right? There was a time where everyone said, startup, are you crazy? Get a good job. And how things change so quickly. But yeah, I think we have a talent shortage already, actually. And I think skilling is hugely important at every level. We have some of the smartest people, definitely, but we just don't have enough really good top schools. Again, for me, the frustration is that they're very smart people who don't come from these top schools. How do you find them? So there's a big need, and we discuss this, by the way, at almost every Ashoka meeting, that we are perfectly comfortable and happy to have 100 Ashokas come up. It can't, and everyone can't do, like we can't do all of them. So good schools have started. I mean, Kriya came up. Now we have Plaksha coming up in tech. We have, so, there's so many good ventures, whether they're private or philanthropic now, I think changing the way. So this will help, but we got to put it on steroids. I'm also, by the way, a big believer that curricula itself is going to change a lot. So I think if there's gig working, there's going to be gig learning. And people are not necessarily now going to keep going. Like the 2-year MBA or the 1-year MBA is being questioned. Do you even need that degree? Or can you pick that up elsewhere? Similarly, on coding, some of the smartest coders learned it from the web. So it's all changing very fast. So we can get talent coming from other places, especially leveraging technology. And that's why one of the hottest sectors is EdTech. You know, the kind of stuff you can do. You don't have to wait for physical. I mean, COVID taught us that, right? Not the best experience, but life went on. Let's face it, many people got degrees whether never going to physical college, which is really sad, but it just shows it can be done, or hybrid can be done. Okay, guys, I had something at 5.
Thank you, Deep. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for sparing the time for us.